The Galactic Military Academy of Keth-Moran stood as a monument to alien arrogance, its crystalline spires reaching toward 3 purple suns like fingers grasping for divine approval. Inside the main barracks, 67 cadets from 12 different species stood at attention, their various appendages, tentacles, and extremities arranged in what each species considered proper military bearing. Commander Thekval, a towering Zeltharian with skin like polished obsidian and 4 eyes that rotated independently, surveyed his charges with the kind of satisfaction normally reserved for viewing prized livestock. His mandibles clicked rhythmically as he paced, each step producing a wet slapping sound that echoed through the chamber. "Attention, cadets." His voice boomed through the translator matrix embedded in the walls. "Today marks the beginning of advanced combat protocol training. You represent the finest warriors from the most civilized species in the galaxy." Most cadets preened at this pronouncement. The Vortak cadets inflated their air sacs proudly. The Quellex cadets' bioluminescent patches pulsed in synchronized patterns of pleasure. Even the notoriously stoic Brentari cadets allowed their ear fronds to twitch with satisfaction. All except one. Maya Torres, the sole human representative, stood with her hands behind her back, dark eyes scanning the room with the kind of bored expression typically reserved for waiting in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Her brown hair was pulled back in the regulation style, though several strands had already escaped to frame her face. She was shorter than most of her fellow cadets, broader in build, but possessed the kind of relaxed posture that suggested she could either fall asleep standing up or spring into action at a moment's notice. "Now," Commander Thekval continued, his 4 eyes converging on Maya with barely concealed disdain, "we have been blessed with the presence of a Deathworlder among us, a human from the 3rd rock orbiting an insignificant yellow star." Several cadets turned to stare at Maya, their expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed revulsion. Maya, for her part, seemed to be studying the ceiling with intense interest, as if she'd spotted something fascinating in the geometric patterns. Instructor Zephyran, a nervous Skithari whose chitinous exterior constantly shifted colors to match his emotional state, scuttled forward on his 6 legs. Currently he was displaying an anxious shade of yellow-green that reminded Maya of old mustard. "Sir," Zephyran's voice chittered through the translator, "perhaps we should begin with the standard weapons inspection? The protocol dictates that all cadets must demonstrate their natural armaments before we can proceed with training exercises." Commander Thekval's mandibles spread wide in what Maya had learned was the Zeltharian equivalent of a smile. It was not a pleasant expression. "Excellent suggestion, instructor. Cadets, you will now display your species' natural weapons for inspection and cataloging. This is standard procedure to ensure proper training protocols are followed." One by one, the cadets stepped forward. The Vorthak cadets extended razor-sharp bone spurs from their forearms. The Quellex demonstrated their ability to secrete paralytic toxins from specialized glands. The Brentari showed off retractable claws that could slice through most metals. Each display was met with approving clicks and notes from the instructors. Maya watched this parade of biological weaponry with growing amusement. When her turn came, she stepped forward with the kind of casual confidence that immediately set every alien nervous system on high alert. "Cadet Torres." Commander Thekval's voice carried the weight of barely contained disgust. "Display your species' natural armaments." Maya looked up at him, then at Instructor Zephyran, then back at the commander. A slow smile spread across her face. "You want to see my natural weapons?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough innocence to be suspicious. "That is what I said, Deathworlder." Maya's smile widened. "Oh, this is going to be fun." Before Maya could demonstrate anything, Commander Thekval's 4 eyes suddenly snapped to attention as his communicator chirped with an urgent message. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he absorbed the information, and his obsidian skin seemed to darken further. "Change of protocol," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been questioned in his life. "We have received intelligence reports of potential security breaches. All cadets will immediately surrender their natural weapons for inspection and temporary containment. A collective murmur ran through the assembled cadets. This was highly irregular. The Vorthak cadets looked at each other with confusion, their air sacs deflating slightly. The Quilex cadets' bioluminescent patches flickered with uncertainty. "Sir," one of the Brentari cadets ventured, "our claws are not removable. They are part of our skeletal structure." "Then you will submit to restraint devices," Commander Thekval replied coldly. "This is not a discussion. This is a direct order." Instructor Zeph Rand's chitinous exterior shifted to a deep orange that Maya had learned indicated extreme anxiety. His 6 legs skittered nervously as he began distributing various containment devices from a hover cart that had been wheeled into the chamber. The metabolic suppressors for the Quilex toxin production, he chittered, his voice pitched higher than normal. Bone locks for the Vorthak spurs. Claw sheaths for the Brentari. Each cadet will be fitted with appropriate restraints until the security assessment is complete. One by one, the alien cadets submitted to the humiliating process. The Vorthak cadets winced as their bone spurs were locked into retraction. The Quilex cadets' proud bioluminescent patches dimmed as metabolic suppressors were attached to their necks. The Brentari cadets stood stoically as their claws were sheathed in durasteel covers. Maya watched this process with the kind of detached interest usually reserved for observing particularly boring reality television. She rocked back and forth on her heels, hands still clasped behind her back, whistling a tune that no alien in the room recognized but somehow found deeply unsettling. Cadet Torres. Commander Thekval's voice cut through her, whistling like a plasma blade through butter. "You will now surrender your weapons." Maya stopped whistling and looked up at him with an expression of pure innocence. "My weapons? Do not play games with me, Deathworlder. Your species' natural armaments? Surrender them. Now." Maya tilted her head to one side, considering. "You know, that's a really interesting request, Commander. I mean, I appreciate the whole security protocol thing, but there's just one tiny problem with your demand." "And what might that be?" Thekval's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like an angry insect swarm. "Well," Maya said, reaching up to scratch behind her ear, "you see, the thing about human weapons is that they're not exactly removable." "Nonsense," Instructor Zeph Rand interjected, his color shifting to an alarmed shade of red. "Every species has removable or controllable natural weapons. It is basic biology." Maya's eyebrows rose. "Oh, is it now?" "Well, in that case," she reached behind her back and appeared to grab something. With a casual flick of her wrist, she tossed a small, curved white object onto the floor between herself and Commander Thekval. The object landed with a soft clicking sound that seemed to echo through the sudden silence like a gunshot. Every alien in the room stared at the small, spine-like object on the floor. It was clearly organic, clearly had come from Maya's body, and clearly had just been casually discarded like it was nothing more than a piece of lint. "There," Maya said cheerfully, dusting off her hands. "One weapon surrendered. Though I have to say, Commander, if you want me to keep disarming myself, you're going to need a much bigger collection bin." Commander Thekval's 4 eyes were fixated on the spine with the kind of horrified fascination normally reserved for watching traffic accidents. That came from inside you?" "Well, it wasn't exactly inside me," Maya corrected, her tone suggesting she was explaining something to a particularly slow child. "It was more like attached to me," was being the operative phrase here. But how did you?" Instructor Zeph Rand's color was now cycling rapidly between orange and red, creating a nauseating strobe effect. "How did I what? Remove it?" Maya shrugged. "Same way you remove any old body part that's outlived its usefulness. Though I have to say, the regeneration process is going to be a real pain. It takes weeks to grow back properly." The silence in the room was so complete that Maya was pretty sure she could hear alien hearts beating in rhythms that definitely weren't healthy. She looked around at the sea of horrified faces, then back at Commander Thekval, then down at the spine on the floor. When she looked back up, Her expression was the picture of helpful cooperation. "So," she said with a smile that would have made sharks nervous, "you first, Commander? I showed you mine." The silence stretched on for what felt like several geological epochs. Commander Thekval's 4 eyes had locked onto the spine with the kind of fixed stare usually reserved for natural disasters or tax audits. His mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, which Maya was beginning to realize might be the Zeltharian equivalent of a blue screen of death. "Commander?" Maya's voice carried just enough concern to be polite. "You're looking a little frozen there. Should I call a medic? I mean, I'm not exactly trained in alien first aid, but I could probably improvise something." That Thekval's voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. "That was part of your skeletal structure." "Well, yeah," Maya said, as if this were the most obvious thing in the universe. "I mean, what did you think it was? A really weird piece of jewelry?" Instructor Zeph Rand's color cycling had accelerated to the point where he resembled a malfunctioning traffic light. But you removed it like it was nothing." "Because it basically was nothing," Maya explained patiently. "Look, I don't know how your species work, but humans shed parts all the time. It's kind of our thing." Shed parts. One of the Vorthak cadets had gone so pale that his air sacs looked like deflated balloons. Maya brightened considerably. "Oh, you want a demonstration? This is great. I love educational opportunities." Before anyone could protest, Maya reached up and ran her fingers through her hair. When she pulled her hand away, several strands came with it, along with what appeared to be small flakes of something white. "Hair follicles," she announced cheerfully, letting the strands drift to the floor. "Completely natural. Happens all the time." "And these little white bits? Dead skin cells? I'm literally shedding them right now as we speak." 3 of the Quillex cadets promptly fainted. Their bioluminescent patches flickered once and went dark as they hit the floor with soft thuds. "But wait, there's more." Maya continued, apparently oblivious to the growing panic around her. She held up her right hand and began examining her fingernails with the kind of clinical interest typically reserved for scientific specimens. "Now, these babies are constantly growing," she explained, then proceeded to bite off a small piece of her thumbnail and spit it onto the floor. "Completely renewable resources, and if you really want to get technical about it." She began picking at what appeared to be loose skin around her cuticles, producing several small, translucent flakes that joined the growing pile of biological debris at her feet. Dead skin, cuticle material, nail clippings. Maya catalogued each item like a teacher going through a lesson plan. "Oh, and if we're talking about things that fall off regularly." She blinked deliberately, and when she opened her eyes, she carefully plucked what appeared to be a small, dark hair from her lower eyelid. "Eyelash," she announced, holding it up for inspection. "These things are constantly falling out and regrowing. It's like having a built-in replacement system." The remaining conscious cadets were now backing away from Maya as if she were a walking biological hazard. Which, from their perspective, she apparently was. "Dear gods of the void," whispered a Bren Tari cadet, his ear fronds trembling. She's falling apart." "I am not falling apart," Maya said with the kind of patient tone usually reserved for correcting small children. "This is completely normal human behavior. We're constantly regenerating tissue, shedding old cells, and replacing worn-out parts. It's actually a very efficient system." Commander Thekval's 4 eyes had now gone completely wide, giving him the appearance of someone who'd just realized they were standing in a minefield. You mean your entire species does this?" "Well, obviously," Maya said. "What did you think? That we were just solid, unchanging lumps of meat? That would be incredibly impractical from a biological standpoint." But the implications. Instructor Zeph Rand's voice had risen to a pitch that was probably causing pain to any species with sensitive hearing. "But if you can casually remove parts of your skeletal structure..." "Oh, that wasn't skeletal structure," Maya corrected helpfully. "That was just a loose piece of cartilage from my ear. Happens sometimes when I sleep wrong." The silence that followed this revelation was so profound that Maya was pretty sure she could hear the sound of alien worldviews crashing down around her. Your ear? Commander Thekval's voice cracked like a teenager going through puberty. Yeah, cartilage is pretty flexible stuff, Maya said, reaching up to demonstrate by wiggling her ear. Sometimes pieces just work loose. No big deal. She looked around at the sea of horrified faces, then down at the small pile of biological debris she'd accumulated at her feet, then back up at the aliens with an expression of dawning realization. Oh, she said, her voice carrying the tone of someone who'd just figured out why the grocery store clerk kept staring at her oddly. Oh, you guys don't shed, do you? The collective silence was answer enough. Maya's grin widened to proportions that would have been considered weaponized in 17 different star systems. Well, she said cheerfully, this is going to be educational for everyone. The educational opportunity Maya had promised was interrupted by the arrival of Lieutenant Kex Mora, a tall Zeltharian security officer whose arrival was announced by the sound of heavy boots and the distinctive whir of scanning equipment. His portable bioscanner was beeping frantically as he approached the scene, and his expression suggested he'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. Commander, he reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic, we have a situation. The bioscanner is detecting massive amounts of biological contamination in this sector. The readings are unprecedented. Commander Thekval's 4 eyes swiveled toward the pile of Maya's discarded body parts, then back to his security officer. Lieutenant, meet Cadet Torres. She's been disarming herself. Lieutenant Kex Mora's scanner let out a particularly urgent series of beeps as he pointed it at Maya. Sir, according to these readings, she's actively shedding biological matter at a rate that should be medically impossible. Either she's dying, or she's human, Maya finished helpfully. Hi there, Lieutenant. Nice scanner. Very shiny. The security officer's mandibles clicked nervously. Commander, I'm going to need her to prove she's completely disarmed. Protocol demands verification that all potential weapons have been surrendered. Maya's eyebrows rose. Oh, you want the full demonstration? Well, okay, but you might want to have those medical kits ready. Some people get a little queasy. Proceed, Commander Thekval ordered, though his voice suggested he was already regretting this decision. Right then, Maya said, cracking her knuckles with a series of pops that made several cadets jump. Let's start with the obvious stuff. She reached up and deliberately pulled out 3 more eyelashes, letting them drift to the floor. Eyelashes, as previously demonstrated, completely renewable, grow back in about 6 weeks. Lieutenant Kex Mora's scanner was now emitting a continuous high-pitched whine. Moving on, Maya continued, beginning to pick at a small scab on her elbow. Scabs. These are basically biological band-aids that our bodies make automatically. They fall off when the new skin underneath is ready. The scab came away with a small flake of dried blood, which she flicked onto the growing pile of biological debris. Sir, whispered one of the Brentari cadets, I think I'm going to be sick. You haven't seen anything yet, Maya said cheerfully. She opened her mouth wide and began prodding at her back teeth with her tongue. Oh, perfect timing. I've got a loose wisdom tooth that's been bothering me for weeks. A loose what? Instructor Zeph Rand's color had shifted to a shade of green that didn't appear anywhere in nature. Wisdom tooth, Maya explained, still poking at her mouth. Humans grow extra teeth that don't fit properly, so they have to be removed. It's like our bodies are constantly trying to upgrade themselves, but can't quite get the measurements right. She wiggled the tooth experimentally. This one's been loose for a while. Usually you'd go to a dentist, but since we're doing a full weapons demonstration. The sound of Maya pulling out her own tooth was remarkably similar to the noise of someone opening a particularly stubborn jar of pickles. The tooth came free with a small amount of blood which she spat onto the floor before holding up the ivory projectile for inspection. One wisdom tooth, she announced. Calcium phosphate construction, natural pointed edge, capable of causing significant tissue damage if properly deployed. 4 more cadets fainted. The remaining ones were now huddled against the far wall like survivors of a natural disaster. "Sir," Lieutenant Kexmora's voice had risen to a squeak. "My scanner is detecting what appears to be an entire secondary human approaching this location." "Secondary human?" Maya perked up. "Oh, that's probably Jake. He's my backup." The door to the chamber slid open, and a tall, lanky human with sandy hair and an expression of mild confusion entered the room. He took one look at the unconscious cadets, the horrified aliens, and Maya standing in the middle of a pile of biological debris, and his face broke into a wide grin. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying a distinct American accent, "please tell me you're not traumatizing the alien cadets again." "I'm not traumatizing them," Maya protested. "I'm educating them." "There's a difference." Jake Morrison, the newcomer, introduced himself to the stunned alien officers. "I'm Maya's partner for the advanced combat exercises, and judging by the smell of fear pheromones in here, I'm guessing she's been giving biology lessons again." She removed her own skeletal structure. Commander Thekval whispered. "Ear cartilage," Maya corrected. "And it wasn't even attached that well." She pulled out her own teeth, Lieutenant Kexmora added, his scanner now smoking slightly. "Wisdom tooth." Jake nodded knowingly. "Those things are useless anyway. I had mine removed last year. Want to see the scars?" The collective no. From every conscious alien in the room was so emphatic that it probably registered on seismic equipment. Okay, Jake said, holding up his hands. "I get it. Sensitive audience." He surveyed the scene with the kind of professional assessment that suggested he'd walked into similar situations before. "So Maya, on a scale of 1 to 10, how badly have you broken their understanding of biology?" Maya considered this. "Well, I haven't shown them the thing where we can dislocate our joints yet." "Our what?" Commander Thekval's voice had gone so high it was barely audible. "Oh, that's a good one," Jake said enthusiastically. "Watch this, Commander." He proceeded to pop his shoulder out of its socket with a wet clicking sound that was clearly audible throughout the chamber. The remaining conscious cadets fainted. "And that," Maya said, surveying the field of unconscious aliens, "is why you should never ask a human to disarm themselves." Jake popped his shoulder back into place with another wet click. "So, what's the plan now? Because I'm pretty sure we've exceeded the maximum recommended dosage of biological horror for one session." Maya looked around at the devastation she'd wrought, then back at the two remaining conscious aliens, who were both staring at her with expressions of absolute terror. "I think," she said thoughtfully, "we might need to have a little chat about what Deathworlder actually means." Commander Thekval and Lieutenant Kexmora exchanged glances that somehow managed to convey 17 different types of existential dread simultaneously. The unconscious cadets were being attended to by medical staff who had arrived with equipment that looked suspiciously like hazmat gear. And perhaps, Commander Thekval said carefully, his voice carrying the tone of someone trying to negotiate with a particularly unstable explosive device, "We should discuss this matter in a more controlled environment." Maya looked around at the field of unconscious aliens, then back at the commander. "You know what? I think we've moved past the point where controlled is really an option here." She walked over to one of the fallen chairs and sat down, gesturing for Jake to do the same. He complied, though his casual sprawl somehow managed to look even more threatening than Maya's upright posture. "Look," Maya said, her voice taking on a surprisingly serious tone, "I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding here about what humans actually are." "You are weapons," Instructor Zeph Rand whispered, his color now a pale yellow that suggested he was in some sort of shock. "Living weapons that disguise themselves as sentient beings." "No," Maya replied firmly, "we're not weapons. We're survival machines." She held up her hand, flexing her fingers. "Every single thing you've seen today? The shedding, the regeneration, the casual body part removal? That's not weaponry. That's maintenance." "Maintenance?" Lieutenant Kexmora's scanner had finally stopped smoking, but he was still holding it like it might explode. "Our bodies are constantly repairing themselves," Jake explained, picking up where Maya left off. "Skin cells replace themselves every few weeks. Hair falls out and regrows. We can heal from injuries that would kill most species. The wisdom tooth wasn't a weapon, Maya continued. It was a design flaw that my body was trying to fix by getting rid of it. The cartilage wasn't armor. It was just extra. Commander Thekval's 4 eyes were now focused on Maya, with a mixture of fascination and horror. But the implications if your species can survive such casual mutilation. It's not mutilation, Maya said patiently. It's Tuesday. We come from a planet that's been trying to kill us for millions of years, Jake added helpfully. Extreme weather, natural disasters, predators that make your nightmares look like children's toys. We didn't evolve weapons. We evolved to refuse to die. The silence that followed this statement was pregnant with implications that none of the aliens particularly wanted to contemplate. So when you call us Deathworlders, Maya said, her voice carrying just a hint of her earlier sarcasm, you're not talking about our capacity for violence. You're talking about our capacity for not dying. Which, Jake added with a grin that was somehow more terrifying than Maya's had been, is considerably more impressive when you think about it. Commander Thekval's mandibles clicked slowly as he processed this information. Your entire species is essentially immortal? Oh, we die eventually, Maya said cheerfully. It just takes a lot more effort than most people expect. She gestured to the pile of biological debris at her feet. All of this? This is just the stuff we throw away on a regular basis. Imagine what we keep. Lieutenant Kexmora's scanner beeped once, weakly, then died entirely. Sir, he said quietly, I think we need to revise our threat assessment protocols. You think? Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've been operating under the assumption that dangerous and fragile are mutually exclusive concepts. Commander Thekval's 4 eyes met Maya's too, and for a moment there was something that might have been respect flickering in their depths. Maya Torres, he said formally, I believe we owe you an apology. Maya's grin returned, though it was somehow less predatory than before. Oh, Commander, you don't owe me an apology. You owe me a much more interesting training program. Jake laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both reassuring and ominous. She's right, you know. If you're going to train Deathworlders, you're going to need to step up your game considerably. Maya stood up, brushing imaginary dust off her uniform. After all, she said, her voice carrying just enough amusement to be dangerous, we haven't even started talking about what happens when we get angry. The medical staff working on the unconscious cadets suddenly looked very interested in their work. 3 standard galactic hours later, Maya found herself sitting in what had formerly been called the Standard Species Integration Office and was now hastily being renamed the Deathworlder Accommodation Department. The nameplate on the door was still wet with fresh paint. Commander Thekval sat across from her, looking like someone who'd recently had his entire understanding of the universe surgically removed and replaced with something far more terrifying. His 4 eyes kept darting between Maya's face and her hands, as if he expected her to start shedding body parts at any moment. So, he said, his voice carefully controlled, we've reviewed our training protocols. And? Maya asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer would be entertaining. All combat exercises involving Deathworlder cadets will now be classified as advanced survival training, he read from a datapad. Standard safety protocols have been expanded, and medical staff will be doubled. Psychological counselors will be on standby. For the other cadets, Lieutenant Kexmora added quickly. Not for you? Maya nodded approvingly. Sensible. Jake and I were getting bored with the basic curriculum anyway. There's more, Commander Thekval continued. You've been promoted to Special Training Instructor for Alien Species Adaptation. Meaning? Meaning you'll be teaching other species how to interact with humans without having complete psychological breakdowns. Maya's grin could have powered a small starship. Oh, this is going to be fun. Through the office window, they could see Jake demonstrating basic human flexibility to a group of terrified Vorthak cadets by touching his toes. The sight of a Deathworlder voluntarily folding himself in half was causing several of them to hyperventilate. There is one thing I don't understand, Commander Thekval said carefully. If your species is so durable, why do you bother with military training at all? Maya looked at him with an expression of genuine surprise. Oh, Commander, you still don't get it, do you? Get what? All of this? Maya gestured around the room, then toward the window where Jake was now doing jumping jacks while alien cadets cowered behind equipment. This is us being harmless. The silence that followed this statement was so profound that Maya was pretty sure she could hear the sound of alien assumptions crumbling across 3-star systems. This is us, she continued cheerfully, playing nice, following rules, being civilized. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the academy grounds where alien cadets were now giving human students a respectful berth of approximately 50 meters. You wanted to see our weapons, Commander. But the thing about humans is, we don't have weapons. She turned back to face him, her smile now carrying the weight of 4 billion years of evolutionary stubbornness. We are the weapon, and we just spent the last 4 hours teaching you how to load us.